Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today I'm going to make a protractor burst. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to center the shirt, and this process is going to go really fast. But down below this video in the description is a link to another video which shows how to center a shirt. Essentially what I'm doing is getting both halves of the front of the shirt right up next to each other and both halves of the back of the shirt right up next to each other. That way, whenever I apply the dye to the shirt, both halves of the front are going to look more similar, and the same thing with the back. I'm going to start by making a mark where I'd like for the center of the burst to be. I'm using a washable marker, and I'm making that mark not too far below where the armpit of the shirt is. The protractor that I'm using is a pretty large one, which I purchased from Harbor Freight. I'm going to place the 0 of the protractor on that mark that I just made on the shirt. Then using my washable marker, every 20 degrees on the protractor, I'm going to make a mark. Using a straight edge and a washable marker, I'm going to draw lines from the center point through the marks that I made on the shirt out to the outer edges of the shirt. These are going to be the lines that I'm going to fold in a few minutes. Okay, so to fold the shirt, I'm going to pinch the very first line, and then I'm going to fold that pinched seam that I just made up to the next line. I have just a little bit of fabric hanging down. I'm going to fold that up and into the rest of the design. I pulled out some plastic clothespins in case I needed them to hold my folds in place, but I actually did fine without those, so I didn't use them on this shirt. I'm going to continue pinching those folds and folding up to the next line, and do that until the entire shirt is folded. In other protractor designs, I've put my lines about 10 degrees apart and had a line on the bottom and a line on the top. That's not necessary. I really just need one line to fold. So I only drew the lines that I'm going to fold for the top of the shirt on this design. I have pulled a small spatula though, where I can work on some of the smaller folds as they go out toward the center of the burst. Okay, so now I have the entire shirt folded, and before I go ahead and tie my lines, I'm going to use a washable marker and a straight edge and draw marks about every 1.5 inches. You can do however far apart or close together you'd like to have your lines, but I'm doing 1.5 inches. Now that I have the lines on my shirt, I'm going to tie them with some sinew. Initially, I thought I would maybe use some rubber bands. I actually pulled out rubber bands to use them on this design, but decided against it because I thought it would be a little bit more difficult to keep my folds in place and tie with rubber bands. I want to just hold my folds in place and give some sort of a line on the shirt where I want to apply my dye. I don't necessarily care if I have the white definition lines from sinew. So when I wrap with the sinew, I'm going to pull it tight, but not pull it until I can't pull it anymore. So I'm just going to do a couple wraps of sinew, pull it tight, and cut the sinew off and move on to the next line. I didn't go ahead and apply the dye to this shirt while it was still damp. You can though, but I ended up putting mine aside and working on some other projects, so by the time I came back to it, it was completely dry. For this shirt, I'm looking for some more gray colors and some darker greens, so that's what I've pulled to apply to this shirt. I've placed the shirt down inside of a piece of vinyl guttering, and this piece of vinyl guttering is about 2.5 feet long. I'm going to end up inclining this shirt, and so that it doesn't slide all the way down and out of the guttering or down to the bottom of the guttering, I'm going to use some kite string and tie it around the very top portion of the shirt, and then I'm going to use a metal clip to clip this piece of kite string to the top end of the vinyl guttering. I have the center of the burst at the top of the guttering, or what is the left side on your screen. This shirt pretty much fills up the guttering height-wise, so I'm going to need to use some pieces of plastic cutting board that I've cut to kind of extend the sides of the guttering. And so that the shirt doesn't slide around inside of the guttering, I'm going to use a couple of small dye application bottles, place those beside the shirt, take and slide a piece of the plastic cutting board beside the bottles in between that and the shirt, and the same thing on the other side between the shirt and the piece of vinyl guttering. That's going to give me a little extra space to add more ice to the shirt. You sometimes have to get creative when you're making ice barriers. I'm going to leave the extra pieces of cutting board off while I apply the dye. Since the shirt is completely dry, I'm going to go ahead and spray it with a little bit of soda ash solution that I have inside of a plastic spray bottle. This is going to help the dye to stick to the shirt better and not so much of it fall off inside of my guttering. Okay, for this shirt, I've chosen 5 colors, and I have more than 5 lines on my shirt, so I'm going to use each color more than once. Also, several of the colors that I've chosen to use are either muck dye colors, which are no longer available, or they're special order colors. The special order colors you can still purchase from Dharma, but you either have to buy them in large quantities, or you can purchase them usually from a Facebook group called Tie-Dye Supplies Marketplace, and I have a link to that group down below this video in the description. Okay, so let me give you the colors that I'm using on this shirt. I'm using Kilt Green, which is a special order color, Dark Side of the Moon, which was a muck dye, Sage Green, which is just a regular Dharma Trading Company color, Stonehenge, which was a muck dye, and Spanish Moss, which is another one of the special order colors. I'm applying the dye directly to the sinew lines, and I'm not making a huge wide line of dye, but I am adding quite a bit of dye to each one of the lines. I want to allow space for this dye to move down the shirt and for the dye colors to split. Hopefully, all these dye colors are going to have pretty color splits. Now I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash over the top of my die lines. Then I'm going to add in my pieces of plastic cutting board and the little die bottles to build up my ice barrier. Now it's time to add on the ice. After I added this first layer of ice, I took a plastic tote, placed one end of this piece of vinyl guttering down in the bottom of the tote, and left the other end hanging off the edge of the tote to incline the shirt. When the first layer of ice melted, I came back and there was some undissolved dye left sitting on top. The dye had done pretty well to kind of flow down the shirt, but I went ahead and added a second layer of ice. I've included some process photos so you can kind of see how the ice melted and the dye flowed. After the second layer of ice melted, there were still some lighter patches on the shirt. I probably could have added a third layer if I wanted to, but I wanted to let the colors be able to flow but not just oversaturate the shirt. I wanted to let the colors be able to have some of that space to split. So I just left the shirt alone. I allowed it to process for 48 hours before I began rinsing it. And to rinse the shirt, I took it to my utility sink and I started rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. You can see when I turn the shirt over that I have quite a bit of white left showing on the back of the shirt. So I'm curious to see what it's going to look like once it's rinsed out. After rinsing in cold for a while, I untied the shirt, warmed the water up to hot, and continued rinsing in hot water to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Like normal, I went ahead and soaked the shirt. And to do that, I ran some really hot water in my utility sink, added some Blue Dawn dish detergent to the water, placed the shirt inside, and allowed it to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out, and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I put the shirt along with some Dharma's Professional Textile detergent into my washing machine, and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed, dried, and ironed the shirt, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one looks really cool. I like all those lines being perfectly spaced apart and the dye flow going down through them. The folds almost make the shirt look like it has dimension. How on one part of the fold it's light and then the darker colors are down in between the lighter folds. It almost looks like it's three-dimensional, which I think is a really cool effect. I do really like the dye colors too. I think these colors flow really well, and I do have some cool color splits. So I'm really happy with the colors, and I'm really happy with the design. I do have just a little bit of undissolved dye speckling on the back portion of the shirt down toward the bottom in the middle, and the same thing on the front. It's not quite as prominent on the front of the shirt though. So I really think this design looks cool. I like all these colors together, but what do you guys think? Do you like the design? Do you like the colors? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed watching the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.